We are going to get started with our special guest today. We do have a treat in store for you, so I would live tweet, I would post things on LinkedIn and just tell folks they better run and hear this highly anticipated lecture by Dr. Gianos. So for those who do not know her, she is our professor of cardiology, and I'm very proud of her designation as professor and her academic promotion recently. So congratulations, Eugenia. She's our system director for cardiovascular prevention, and she is also the director for our women's heart program at Lenox Hill. We will be reviewing a few things with her today. We're discussing the status of women in leadership, discussing the evolving role of women in medicine, and cardiology. Opportunities for leadership will be highlighted, and also she will be giving some tips, tricks, and insights into the things she has learned along the way, and some wishes that she has for us. So on behalf of the American College of Cardiology, I do want to encourage everyone, if you haven't registered, please register for this weekend's ACC conference. There are special DE&I lectures that are going on, and I do want to highlight that you can go to the ACC website and see, it's called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Activities. I just pulled it up to make sure it is live, and it is. So if you go ACC and look up the sessions, plan your program, diversity, equity, and inclusion activities. There is one particular that I am participating in on Sunday entitled Overcoming Real World Obstacles to Cardiovascular Prevention Globally, and I will be talking about some diversity, equity, and inclusion aspects of that. So I'm going to hand it over without further ado to Dr. Gianos to talk about women in leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, or as we know her, RMB. I'm equally proud of you and of our women at Lenox Hill and at Northwell in general, and I'm honored that you asked me to speak tonight. You know, I am excited just because I think, you know, sharing with you a little bit about my leadership experience, but also I kind of wish somebody many years ago had given me a little bit more advice about what to do in advance and how to approach certain things and really how to strategize a little bit better. So really tonight, what I'm hoping to do is, my slides, let's see, there we go, perfect. I'm going to go over very briefly the status of women in leadership overall currently, discuss the evolving role of women in medicine, highlight some opportunities specifically in leadership within cardiology, and also just give you some insights, like I said, that I wish I had had. So just to start with just a few stats. I mean, we could do an entire talk of stats on this topic with respect to women. And reality is that unfortunately, women only hold about 24% of senior management roles. They make up about 3% of Fortune 500 CEOs. Only 1 in 18 women earn a 6-figure salary, whereas men, 1 in 7 do so. And this specific wage and leadership gap is even wider for women of color. And specifically, when we look at academic medicine, you can see that there's certainly no issue of women going into medicine. And if anything, the majority of physicians are, in fact, female nowadays. But when you get up into those leadership positions, unfortunately, very few are in division chief roles. And, you know, again, full professor, I'm very grateful to Northwell for encouraging me to apply for full professor and for recognizing, you know, the need to make sure that they're crediting more and more people, and specifically women, with such titles, and even having a leadership role that is such, you know, system-wide. So, you know, and then specifically also cardiology is a little bit different than medicine in general. There's lots of women in internal medicine, right? And the number of women is increasing as the years go by in internal medicine overall. But for some reason, there are not a lot of women going into cardiology. And still, it accounts for only about 21% of cardiology being female. And, you know, we have a lot of low representation of women in lucrative specialties such as cardiology, and it's probably contributing to an even greater gender gap among physicians overall. So some of this has actually led to a bit of a movement, something we call FACE of Cardiology. And it's really to change the representation we have currently of women in cardiology. And this is something that the American College of Cardiology WIC group is focusing on and has been using this hashtag as well, we learned. And same with our Lenox Hill Women's Heart Program, partnering with the Katz Institute for Women's Health. Myself and my colleague, Dr. Tara Narula, have been really working with our teams to see if we can start at a much younger age. So we're really working with our affiliated Hofstra medical students, with the residents. We're having panels and discussing with them what a career in cardiology really is, and really encouraging them and mentoring them so that we can change how many women are entering this field. But there's also the realities of our field. And this is a really nice publication from some of my colleagues, Dr. Jennifer Maris, Dr. Rob Roswell, others, Catherine Biggs and Clyde Yancey, a number of the many people on this document in NYACC very recently published. As a matter of fact, this is the final proof that apparently I pulled this off of. But there is something about the environment that needs some work. And so, some of this is specific to women and specific to gender issues, and some of it is specific to minorities, LGBTQ. Some of it is just a bad environment and something that we all need to work on to really get to the top of this beautiful figure here. And there are other issues, again, to be aware of what women face in academic medicine. So, this title really about women in leadership swimming against the tide. And there was even a nice Medscape or MedPage, actually, article recently talking about how women are going up the wrong side of the escalator. So doing twice the work very often to get to the same level of success, of leadership, of reimbursement. There's also an issue with people being selected for panels, also labeled as manels in the past, and definitely efforts to work on that and see how we can change that. And with fair systems, though, I don't know if quotas always just answer, all of our questions, but for all of us just to be aware, are we thinking more broadly? Are we thinking about diversity that may contribute and improve all of our structures and our systems? And this is an article that I wrote years ago with Kim Williams, Pam Douglas, Lynn Braun, really recognizing the fact that this is when Martina Navratilova was being paid 1/10 of what John McEnroe was being paid in order to do commentating. And really, this is something that, they're both, huge celebrities. And yes, you could say maybe he has a little bit more of a presence, but 10 times as much, really? Something that really raises awareness. And same thing for cardiology and particularly nursing. I mean, nursing is sort of a standard field. You could have very, very specific metrics, and yet men in nursing are paid more than women in nursing. So this is something that exists in many, many different places. But I just want you guys to be aware of these things, because it's really important that when you go into these things, you know what the status quo is, you know what you need to be working on and thinking about, but not to be negative about this at all, because people have succeeded in overcoming these obstacles, right? And this is just many, many, many years of the US women's soccer team being underpaid by far compared to the men, despite the fact that they were far more popular. Their games were being watched much more. And they finally, after many, many years, Megan Rapinoe sort of driving this legislature, ended up finally getting a settlement to pay them back for all of the revenue that they're due. So, this is going to take time. This is awareness. This is, positive ways that people can little by little change existing structures. And it shouldn't be taken personally either. Sometimes these things are happening just because people aren't aware. They're not necessarily trying always to hold people back, but people need to be aware and really working to change the system. So to tell you just a little bit about my personal story, just because it's not typical, and there was nothing that suggested I should be a cardiologist in my childhood. I'm the daughter of Greek immigrant parents who owned a bowling alley and a bar in the Bronx, which essentially taught me a lot about work ethic and drive and family and culture. And really in the Bronx and South Bronx, learning about disparities, diversity, cultural differences, being able to appreciate all those different things that I now can appreciate in healthcare. I played a lot of basketball growing up. Just happened to be that at my Greek church when I was younger, our coach encouraged us to do this. So I played many, many years, and that really just helped me with respect to teamwork and really bonding with other people, leadership. I was point guard, captain. So a lot of stuff that then has been helpful to me later in life. And of note, as a woman, I was never really encouraged to pursue medicine. I was actually discouraged as a woman, people thinking, you know, this might not be the most ideal family kind of job, and maybe you shouldn't really pursue this. So I just want others to be aware that if they have, you know, visions of having a family and whatnot, it does not preclude having an awesome career or even being in leadership. These are not mutually exclusive. It's all about having the right support and figuring out ways to get the different things in your life to happen. I also didn't have role models for what I wanted to be. There was no one who was a physician in my family, friends, you know, but I found other role models out there. I volunteered in a nursing home and ended up working with an aunt who was a nurse and met more people, and then really just started to love the field of medicine. And so a lot of my early upbringing, I think, has translated into my current position and my leadership roles and all that I'm doing. And I'm very, you know, grateful to have the opportunity at Northwell to lead in a system role and really be the one who's figuring out programs in a healthcare system. And I think you should be aware that, you know, as somebody who's working in a health system or in any job, if you have ideas, if you have good ideas and a good plan, people will put them into effect. You just have to show that this is feasible. You have to show the value, the end result of what you want to do. So really, really important to keep all of that in mind, that you have tremendous power to change things out there. Also, it's been a privilege to, for many, many years now, be in a teaching environment. I think that's what drove me to go into academic medicine. I love to mentor, I love to teach. And, you know, there's never a time almost that I'm not seeing patients with a trainee of some sort, whether it's a medical student, residents, fellows, etc. We're always doing research together, mentoring, and it's great to teach them the field of cardiovascular prevention, which has not really been at the forefront for many years. It was not really in my training. And this is a whole new field that, you know, it's great to be able to teach another generation. And just keep in mind that there are many, many fields out there for you all to pursue. So this is my, you know, both national and, you know, back at Northwell, NYU, various folks who I've, you know, gotten really, really close to with respect to cardiovascular prevention. I'm very passionate about. It was, you know, I came to Northwell and very quickly, just by figuring out who's really interested in this field, who can we get out there to, you know, really partner. We've created a very extensive cardiovascular prevention network. I'm very proud of our Women's Heart program. We have extraordinary women at Lenox Hill, quite a large number of women who are in cardiology, including R&B, and also the CATS Institute for Women's Health, where we partner together and have tremendous programs for our patients, for research, for clinical programs. So just some advice that's been useful to me over the years, whether you go into leadership or not, you know, in terms of your first jobs, thinking about, you know, well, what am I looking for? What kind of position should I be in? Think about the things that you absolutely love. And in cardiology, it's like, do you like EP? Do you like doing echoes? Do you like seeing patients? Do you like doing research? Do you like administrative? And pick a few of those things that you absolutely love, that you will find a position that has a combination of a couple of these things. Make sure you're using the skill sets that you want to have long-term in that job. Ask other people about that new place, that, what is the important information to know, and really start to tell people when you're looking for a position, whether it's to be in a leadership position in an organization or it's to get a new job, you have to talk to people. These things don't just happen. They don't just come to people. You have to really network. And you should also really learn to sell yourself. This is something that I think as women, we're just not taught when we're young. Many of us, it could be different for some people in their upbringing. We're not taught to say, well, I've developed this great program and I really, am passionate about it. And this is what we've been able to accomplish. We don't really talk about the things that we've done, well to sell ourselves. In terms of the first job, it doesn't have to be like exactly what you're going to do eventually, but it's just the starting point for what you're going to get to down the line. And, I started my first job at NYU Medical Center, and it really was the ideal job for me coming out of fellowship. I did nuclear, I did echo, I did teaching, I worked at Bellevue, I had a private practice. It was really a great combination of things. And I was there for many years, and it really was the backbone for a lot of the things I'm doing now. It got me into research, learning about prevention, experts in the field that I've worked with over the years. And then when you're at a position, you need to sort of reflect always, I think, throughout your life. Well, how is this going for me? Am I happy here? Is this enough of an opportunity? Do I have colleagues that I really connect well with? Are you getting to do mostly what you like? You're not going to find a job where you have a perfect scenario with nothing you don't like, but the majority of what you should be doing should be, making you happy. Are you empowered to improve the areas that are not ideal where you are? And what are the other opportunities outside of your current role? And what is your value? And for me, one of my mentors, Dr. Stacy Rosen, while I was at NYU, just said, why don't you just come and, hear about what we're doing here? Just come on over and think about what we have, And really, I think you just need to think more broadly. I had a great, job. It's just that there sometimes are opportunities elsewhere where they don't have the people and that other institution, for the role that you're looking for, where they may have like 10 others at the place that you're coming from. So, really, I think that always being aware and reevaluating where you are throughout your career is important. Also, using national organizations to leverage your career is key. So it makes you more valuable. If you are, as many people are in leadership positions in the ACC or other organizations, then they can bring that knowledge back to their own hospital. You get to know so many other national experts, which then leads to opportunities for research or speaking. And something about the ACC that I'd never really appreciated, I thought just people developed a reputation in being great in a field and then they got asked to speak, which is definitely true. But there's also this recognition of how much service you provide to whatever organization. If you've been serving on multiple committees and you've been, sort of contributing to reviewing abstracts and doing, that is a very important thing that can help you move up in the organization. So you need to get involved on a, some level in a committee or wherever it is, and then move up. And then joining at the trainee level, just so you know, can be actually a lot easier than when you're an attending. They're very eager to get FITs involved. So this could be a really good opportunity to get onto whatever committee you may be interested in. And for me, I realized early on that I was very involved in the National Lipid Association early in my career. But for prevention, many of the people who I was, working with extensively in the NLA were also very, very involved in the ACC. So there's a lot of overlap, which then leads to opportunities in other places. And then people like Kim Williams, Jamie Underberg, Larry Sperling, Roger Blumenthal, people who have really mentored me and helped me to, get to that next level. And you get to know them very well through these organizations. Committee service. So it doesn't just, you don't just become president, right? You don't just become the director of something. You start as just being a member, and then you're on one committee, and then you move up. And a lot of the organizations, you actually just start at secretary and then escalate little by little as you go along. So those are just important career things, I think. When it comes to leadership, though, in terms of what makes a great leader, I think it may not be. I think we sometimes think of leaders as being these very firm, perhaps loud, and tough people. But I think true great leaders are ones that actually listen quite a bit. They support their teams. They're objective about things. They do a lot of team building. They are calm and collected during especially challenging times. They leave the ego out of the conversation. Not an easy thing, you know. Sometimes you may be annoyed with someone and like, I'm just going to do this because this is what I want to do, you know, whatever. But if you're really thinking about the vision and thinking about the goals of the organization or the program or whatever, then you probably won't go wrong. You won't be sort of just acting on your own ego. You have to be a good problem solver because there are a lot of problems. If you are a leader, you will probably constantly be, oh, this didn't work out. So what do we do? Okay, now we've got this going on. So problem solving is really key, and just staying focused and committed is important. And I hate to break it to you, but even if you don't go into administration, you will be leaders and influencers in your careers, no matter what, in medicine. If you have an office practice, something I learned very early on, and I did actually work with a great career coach that I oddly enough, when I was at NYU, won a raffle for time management. And I didn't have enough time for a year to actually take the course in time management with this career coach, but I've worked with her more recently and she's amazing. So it's been very helpful, but I learned that I actually have to be the one to change the office practice. Like if you think there are issues, you know, in terms of how the system's running, it's actually you that, whether you're the director or not, if you want to get through the day and get things to be more efficient, you need to lead, you need to influence people. And academic medicine, if you're working with trainees and fellows, and you will be leading in many ways in the national organization, you'll get on committees, and you know, there's many, many opportunities. And the last one is advocacy. I have to say, you know, you've learned a lot through the DEI committee, in the Women in Cardiology committee, and even things like sort of prevention and lifestyle and food, you know, inadequacies for patients and food deserts and whatnot. I think we have a tremendous ability to change, to advocate on a legislative level, in our own hospitals, for our programs. There's a lot of places that I think we often don't think it's our role, or that we even have the capacity to do this, but this is actually extremely important. So really, I'm going to just give you guys a few sort of general tips. Like that was more leadership related, but this I think you can apply to everything. It's always hard to understand what exactly you should be focusing on. And this is one important lesson that Stacey Rosen also, I think, showed me one day. And it's really tough not to do this. You don't realize that this is where I think I get stuck, the things I can't control. You know, working on things that I can control. I work on things that matter. I'm like, no, we have to change it. But if you really don't have the ability to change that at that moment, you're wasting your time. So you need to figure out other ways to get there, perhaps, but really just focusing on the things that are important and the things that you have the capacity to improve. And so these are my top 10 list. I gave this talk to the Arizona WIC group a couple of years ago, and I put these together just as sort of explaining to women what I think they need to do based on all of the things that I did wrong. So one is anathisefton, which is a Greek saying for know thyself. And I think that no matter what you go into, it's really such an important thing to reflect and say, okay, well, I'm really good at, you know, interacting with people and patients and team building, and I'm innovative. Or no, I actually don't like working with people. I like working independently and doing research, and I'm more analytic, or whatever it is. But you have to really start to know who you are and what your goals are and where you could potentially succeed most. You need to think big. You know, there's no reason to think just like, oh, all I should be able to do is X, Y, Z. No, think about the big goals, but start small, right? And of course, start, right? Like, I think sometimes we get so focused on this big project, we don't even know where to target it. But, think of the big project, that's where I want to be. Think of a small goal and start, really small. Here's another one that my colleague, Dr. Benita Shah, and she always says that what you see on Facebook is really just highlights of people's lives. So it looks all great because all you're seeing is the great stuff, right? And then I think people get caught up in comparing themselves to others where it doesn't really help. So, yes, you need to know your own value. You need to know what you're being compared against. And, especially in your career, you need to understand all those concepts. But don't just assume that just because that person is publishing or that person has that role, that is what you need. Really, really important to think that way. Don't narrow your opportunities. So, another thing is that there are just tremendous numbers of different opportunities. And when you just think very narrowly, you may very well miss the boat on a different way that you could be approaching either a problem or your career in general. Share selectively. This is interesting because I think, one thing is I do historically remember, particularly, I think being at NYU earlier in my career when we were at a city hospital and, things didn't always run as smoothly as I may have wanted at times. And we just complained. We just complained about a lot of different things. And I think one is to be proactive. You see a problem, you think of a solution, and you propose it and you work to fix it. Don't just complain, number one. And two, depending on what it is that you're discussing and what issues you have, just be aware of who you're talking to. You have to be wary that you are sharing with the right people because things can work against you in the end. Don't get in your own way is a rule I have just from seeing women who, I guess, encounter some degree of this imposter syndrome. Perhaps when early in my career, I may have, felt the same myself. Not necessarily that I thought less of myself. I just thought all these other folks who were talking all the time knew everything in the world. And then I was like, oh, no, they do not know everything in the world, apparently. But, it takes some time to sort of appreciate that. And I still have friends who question whether or not they are good enough to give a talk, to be on a certain committee, whether they should be advocating for themselves because they're like, well, do I really deserve this, etc. So that's where I think we get in our own way as women and potentially, many others out there. So don't get in your own way. When someone shows you their true colors, believe them the first time. This is something that just applies to life, but in your career, it's the same thing. You will have certain personalities that you're going to have to figure out who's your team going to be, who are you going to be partnering with, collaborating with. And when you start to get a sense of those personalities, you really need to use that as you move forward and not forget, oh, wait a minute, this is a person who's not going to be helping at the end of the day. So, I better be aware of this. Don't abandon good ideas because of criticism. This is key. I think that, very often in our lives, we end up potentially questioning whether or not something's good. And others could be putting something down because whatever they want to put forward may not, be ideal for that. But also they may just not see your perspective. So what I've learned to do is really just to say, okay, you know what? I am going to get the answer no, probably about 3 times, and then they're going to say yes. So I'm just going to keep on asking and I'm going to keep proposing this idea, assuming that it's a good idea. You need to be objective yourself. You need to know if you're pushing appropriately. So don't abandon those good ideas. This is one of my favorite cartoons, Knocked, But You Weren't In, opportunity. So, I've also seen where opportunities come up, and because people are so focused on some little area, they're not even seeing the bigger picture that, oh, wow, like if you took that opportunity, that would be a tremendous change for you. So really be aware of all those opportunities. And again, Marissa Santoro, the career coach I've worked with, this is sort of like what the core of her program is: trust your gut. It's really about following whatever you're doing in your life, in your career. It really has to be, you know what, I don't feel comfortable with this. This is really what I'm passionate about. This is not working for me, you know, personally in my life. It's really trusting your gut in all of the decisions you make in a given day. So yeah, there's one more slide that I don't know where it went, but essentially the essence of that other slide was about all of the women in cardiology in my program. And I'm actually going to look for it for 1 second, because it's just to show you that careers in medicine can be very, very varied. So I don't think I showed you guys this one. I don't know what exactly happened, but here we go. So in my, health system and elsewhere, there are such unique positions in healthcare in these areas, and people combining different things. So Tara Narula doing, she's a CBS News correspondent and a clinician and administrator. Benita Shah is an interventionalist, leading research and administration. There's one of my colleagues, Lyra Ogler, who's a business owner and a clinician. So very much thinking about the unique kind of combinations you can have. This is where you need to think outside of the box. One of my colleagues is a structural echo attending and is going back to train for interventional. I'm very proud of her. She's got 2 kids and she's like, nope, this is what I'm passionate about and I'm going to go do it. System directors in our health system doing, multiple different jobs. Some of the huge positions in our health system are, held by women. Our VP for Katz Institute, Stacey Rose, and VP for Feinstein Institute, Karina Davidson, who really is a huge advocate for team building and really building leadership and mentoring and guiding people to really be very productive in what you accomplish. The SVP for our Center for Equity of Care and Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, Jennifer Maris, and Jill Kalman, who's now our Senior VP and CMO and Deputy Physician in Chief. So there are huge leadership opportunities out there for women, but I think you just have to think differently about what do I like, what do I enjoy? And sometimes that position may be just a little different than what you potentially had originally envisioned, but it should really use all your strengths and highlight, who you are. So my final slides really are, start somewhere. Do good work. Sometimes people just keep coming to me and saying, oh, I just want an opportunity. I just want my name on a paper. You don't just get your name on a paper. You kind of have to do a little bit of work and then your name goes on the paper. So you do good work, people recognize it, and then you get bigger opportunities. That's how all this happens. Tell people you're looking for opportunities. There are lots of opportunities out there. I actually have to sometimes choose people for talks or papers or things like that. And it's, sometimes you're like, who should I, and if people have told you that they're interested, that can really be useful. And just have fun, right? Like you want to enjoy your life. You want to find balance. You want to have the things that are important to you, whether it's family, whether it's having children, whether it's just having a significant other, traveling, having hobbies that you commit your time to, being able to do outreach or volunteer work. Really try to find some balance. Our healthcare system is challenging at the moment. This is the reality. It is not an easy system to navigate, whether you're a patient or a clinician, and you need to stay focused. You need to find a great balance in a career and be able to continue this long term. So really try to have fun, keep doing what you enjoy, and things will come to you. And lastly, I'm just going to put a very quick plug into our From Prevention to Intervention conference, which this year is going to be focused on women's heart health. And it's Friday, June 10th, and our registration is open. So we'd love for you to join, since this is obviously a very important women's focused topic. And today's Physicians Day, so happy Physicians Day. Tomorrow, happy Residents and Fellows Day. That's all I have for you, but please reach out if you have questions. I'm happy to answer them for you or chat anytime. Thank you.
I'm going to open it up for comments and questions. We do have a logistical question, which is, can we share your email? I feel like someone wants to ask you some questions offline. So
Sure.
if that's possible, we can share that. But while people are starting to populate the chat box, I also invite you, if you don't want to utilize the chat box, you can certainly come off of mute and we can speak your question. You can speak your question over the microphone. So I believe on Zoom here, there is a raise hand function. So if you just put on your raise hand function, I can see you in the gallery. So to open up the questions, there's one that I have quite often posed to me, which is, if I am at a center, right, that doesn't have a Karina Davidson or a Jen Perez or Stacy Rosen, what would I do in order to, seek out a like-minded mentor or example, right? Someone that I can emulate, who's a woman in leadership, when I may not have that visible to me.
Great question. And there is, a lot of research suggesting that if you see, sort of women in leadership, that is going to translate, into things happening in the future. So it's really important that we just keep getting more and more women into leadership so nobody has that problem. But having said that, you and I both have mentors at other institutions that are great. They happen to be men who are pro-women, and there's a lot of those out there too. For R&B, it's Clyde Yancey. For me, it's been Kim Williams, who's been really supportive. And so, one is, it doesn't have to be a woman who's supporting you always and sponsoring you, right? Creating those opportunities for you and things. But one is just get involved in these national organizations. You go to the meetings and end up very often chatting with these other people, like Pam Morris has, guided me a little bit. Pam Taub and others in my prevention field. So just going to the meetings and attending them is really, really important. If there's a particular area that you want to focus on and there's a person at another institution that is expert in something, you'd be surprised. You can just reach out to them and see if they might be willing to chat with you or guide you or, connect you with the right resources. And actually, you guys have a mentoring program and you connect people, I know, because I've gotten connected that way to people who are interested. So certainly using the ACC for that is a great way to do it.
Yes, we certainly do. A shameless plug, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Mentorship Program. There's an application. You can contact Katerina and she will give you the information and the links needed to hook you up with somebody who matches either a career or content based counseling and mentorship. Another question that's been posed is, as a woman, sometimes you are directed towards a gender specific area of research. Why don't you go into women's health? Why don't you look into this? And you may not want to be one of those providers for particular, gender specific health, and you may want to do something that may be more male dominated. How do you go against that tide if you are not passionate about, say, a gender specific health aspect of cardiology?
Right. I think you have to see what people are telling you and why they're telling it to you, and trust your gut on what you know is right for you. And some people, some of the gender specific areas, which technically people would say, preventive cardiology would be one of those fields that is maybe ideal for women. If you take on all the leadership stuff and many, many talks and all that stuff, it becomes less appealing because you're using all your time. Obviously, it can be quite demanding. But I think that, a lot of those folks have these things ingrained in them that they believe they're telling you for a good reason to go into those fields because it will truly be better for your life. So I think you have to trust your gut and simply say, no, I really appreciate that advice. That's great, but this is what I'm, interested in. This is what I'm passionate about. And you really have to be a little bit forceful. I found it interesting always that, especially if you are nice or patient or kind, people just sort of assume that, you're not really tough enough for leadership, for the cath lab, for EP, for whatever it is. But that's not necessarily the truth. So you should really just trust your gut and simply, find other people in those fields. I do think that the women, particularly in cath and in EP, should find other women in that field and stay connected to them, right? Those are very, very male-dominated fields, and it's not easy to sort of always succeed in those areas. And there's amazing women, each of them, but find the right people to talk to in those areas too.
Do we have any interventional or electrophysiology women physicians on the line? If so, feel free to come off mute and share your experience. There's another issue or questions or commentary that has come up often, and I think maybe you were part of that discussion, one of the discussions that we had with regard to protected time for maternity leave. So how do you advocate for yourself, whether you're undergoing fertility treatments, breast cancer treatments, postpartum, child care, elder care, because research has shown the woman often bears the brunt of elder care and caregiving responsibilities in and outside of the home. So how do you advocate for yourself without sounding like you're shirking work or unable to be on par with male counterparts who may not be taking as much time as you?
That's right. So other countries do this a lot better than we do. They have, policies in effect that protect both men and women for pregnancy planning and for maternity leave and various things. It is unfortunate that, and there's even a recent article I think that came out about how women don't feel supported in cardiology, like during pregnancy and medicine. So I think that what it needs as an individual, you just sort of need to be firm about, this is very important for me medically, my health, my well-being. Nobody can really tell you that you have to do something when you have a health issue going on, whether it's pregnancy or it's a health issue. You have a right to have that time. It's not an easy discussion because the expectations are like, oh, you should be able to. I know somebody who was out actually during the time of her breast cancer treatment and whatnot, and they were like, well, maybe you can just manage your inbox, while you're out and stuff like that. That's not exactly ideal. Psychologically, people are dealing with stress. They may not be feeling well and things like that. So you just have to be firm and sort of say, listen, I want to come back super strong and I'm going to be ready, but I need this time for my health, for my mental status, and, sort of be firm about that. And then I think we just need better jobs as institutions and setting policy and setting people who review, are people getting fair, health protection. And you're right, like it's just unfortunate that a woman would have to both, sometimes that whole sandwich generation too, they're taking care of their parents who are sick and their kids and or whatever. It's a lot to bear. So there needs to be more policy change that protects women to do all of that.
And a last question that is often posed of me and that I often pose to my mentor is, when I am looking to advance in a leadership position or in an academic promotion situation, or if you're applying for grants, how would you, and I don't want to say marketing, but I guess it is that sort of thing, how would you market yourself to make yourself an attractive candidate? Now, I know, you're putting your packet together in terms of all of your credentials, but, your credentials on paper compared to, male counterpart credentials on paper, we know are not weighted the same. So how do you advocate for yourself? Should you have someone independent with you in the room? Should you have a healthcare attorney also assist you? What are your words of wisdom? And then I will stop talking, I promise, and allow the audience to participate. But I am monitoring the chat box. I don't see any comments or questions in the chat box. So I've got more where those came from.
No worries. Those are great questions. And I do think that I get really busy and I forget to sort of literally document all that I've done. And for years, I think I would have given multiple talks and maybe, you know, published a few papers and done some community outreach and never even had the time to put it on my CV, which is really bad. You know, like you're really losing out on getting credit for all the things that you do. So number one, document it well, keep a record of all the things you do, including your clinical productivity and things like that. You know, you really want to show like, this is how productive I've been. I've started to view this whole, you know, working for, you know, whether you're in a private practice or in an academic medical center, you're working for administrators who, it's nothing personal. They have to stay in the black at the end of the day as well, right? So they're going to judge you to some extent. Like, how productive were you? And did you do other stuff? And, you know, whatever. So if you just sort of start to think the way they're thinking, then you can, you know, make sure to show how well you're doing. And then in terms of presenting yourself, you're right. Like you need to know what it is that they're looking for and make sure to highlight those things. And you're right, like there's not always fair, you know, expectations of women, or they don't look at the stuff the same way. I've definitely gone on interviews and people have said, are you sure? Because this job is really hard and a lot of hours. Are you sure you want to do it? I was like, yeah, I know. It's all good. So, you know, you really have to sort of present yourself. And I would say just also very strongly, like you do not want to come off as somebody who's just like, okay, sure, whatever, no problem. Like you need to be a little bit firm. You need to be very clear and convincing of your value with others. And the one thing I didn't mention, and it's not necessarily related to this, is just that there's some women out there who advocate for this and are doing it well. Like Dr. Roxana Moran is amazing, you know, very supportive of the women, has created a Women as One network. And she, you know, there's actually been a number of these that I've seen on MedPage and other places where they are creating networks of women where you have opportunities, you put your name in, and then whoever needs a talk, they can find speakers there for it. There are mentoring opportunities, there's research grant opportunities there. But yes, a lot of this is networking with the right people, getting the right advice, you know, getting your presenting it all correctly. And then there's other people, you know, even including people like Judy Hockman, who's succeeded at like the, you know, most unbelievable level for research. And, you know, it really takes discipline and hard work and staying committed to all these different things. So there are women out there to look to and to sort of understand how you can do it, but really keep those things in mind for yourself as you're developing your own portfolio.
In that vein of conversation, Natasha Vartek was asking, you know, how do you do this without coming off negatively, or not coming off negatively, but having people perceive you that way? So you can have someone either be deemed assertive and authoritative and have a leadership quality, or you can be seen as bossy and aggressive. So, and unfortunately, those two adjectives are often attached to women. So how do you can't control people's reaction to your leadership style, but how do you be strong without having people perceive you as aggressive?
Yes. So, and it's a tough balance. You know, when I came to Northwell, even in my practice, you know, it's such a fine balance. I came in and I was like, no, but we need to change certain things in terms of productivity and systems, you know, like how to put things into effect. But you want people to not sort of be scared of you and really like not respect you because they think you're too tough. But you also can't be too nice because they're not going to do stuff, right? So you're looking for that perfect balance, and it's not possible to find the perfect balance. But having said that, I think what I have succeeded therein, and we've got a great office manager and we work really, really well together now, is if you stay focused on the issues and you stay persistent and tough, but on the reasons for what you're saying is, you know, correct. It's not like just like, look, I'm just saying this because I'm right. That doesn't go over very well. But if it's like, no, we really are looking to improve patient care here, and I really feel strongly that this is what we need to do. You know, or I know we can develop this program better, and it's really important that we get this done, or I need XYZ. I think if you don't make it personal, if you continue to focus on the goals, then they start to realize that you're being tough because you want the program to succeed, or you want other things to do well. And, they see that. They see, do you put yourself first, all the time? Do you do other things? Because then they'll say, oh, you know what, this person is not, helping us. So it's not an easy balance. And sadly, as a woman, I think, if you're patient and you try to be whatever, then unfortunately people may assume that you're not tough enough and whatnot. So it's going to be a tough balance. I'm going to be honest with you, but just be persistent and be fair.
We have Christina Graham says, do you have tips on how to find and or approach potential mentors? And this is a frequent question that comes up at each of our DEI sessions. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think you can start locally and then, expand within organizations and whatnot. It really depends on your expertise, and you can also look even outside of medicine. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you're looking for skills at negotiating or program building, or team leading or things like that, it doesn't have to be somebody in medicine. It could be a career coach. It could be that you take a course online in leadership, or you do other stuff that really improve your abilities. If it's specifically to gain knowledge or connections or pathways in medicine, and you need a medicine person, you can look locally at your own institution. And I would say not even just your own division. That's where I've been at NYU and Northwell. Like, these are huge places that if I think outside of cardiology, within every other area, there are people who could potentially be great mentors, people who do great research, people who are doing, great things in clinical care, other areas. So, you can start locally, but then being involved in the national organizations or having friends at other institutions is really important also, because you learn so much more. You're like, oh, that's how you guys work this particular problem. Like, oh, we've been approaching it in a different way, so you can really, really enhance what you know by having more connections.
And I would say if you're looking for a gender specific group to network with, there is the Women in Cardiology group within ACC, and regionally and nationally there are opportunities to network within that group, both on a small and a large scale. So if you are looking for someone to walk you through the nuances of being a woman in leadership within cardiology and want to be matched with another woman who's a leader in cardiology, then I think the WIC group may be a good starting place for that. We do have a couple of minutes left, so I do want to give some last few opportunities to the audience. So feel free to come off mute and ask Dr. Gianos a question, or add to the commentary if you have tips or words of advice or wisdom if you are a leader in cardiology and would like to add to the discussion.
Yes, please. We'd love to hear more from others too.
I do see one of my dear friends and good mentors, Stacy Rosen. So if you are able to talk and would like to share some pearls of wisdom to add to Dr. Gianos's session today, please feel free. I'm trying to look for, I see Dr. Henry on the line. So definitely, if you would like to share in the last few minutes, if there's any pearls you want us to come away with, but otherwise I'll give it a pregnant pause. Oh, Dr. Katz, I see. Dina and Suman. Don't be shy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Sonia.
I've learned so much, Eugenia. No, but no, awesome, spot on with all of the words of wisdom. These guys have been my mentors, Eugenia and Stacy as well. And, that was a spot on top 10. I think everything that's being said, is accurate. I just recently sort of got more involved in these committees and, sort of saying yes to opportunities. which I don't think I did for the first, I did the talks and got involved in the CATS Women's, but trying to expand, I think, more regionally gives you a broader, focus, and just networking a little bit more is really helpful to see other perspectives. So I think everything that's been said is really spot on. I think it's difficult for women, myself included, to approach leadership, to, kind of make sure they see your, smaller vision for whatever your section is. So I think it's just persistence. that would be my one sort of tip, is sort of keep at it, and eventually they kind of see it, and see the points, and also always bring data. Data is very supportive. And so that would be my word of wisdom to add.
I would concur, Dr. Henry. Excellent, right? So I think who had this question? Natasha, I believe, right? How do you advocate and promote things you want to do and fight for your position without coming off, in a negative light? But the data will speak for itself. So if you have factual information, not just a feeling, a gestalt, right, an emotion, right, that's not taken in hand as seriously as irrefutable facts, right? So if you come prepared with numbers, graphs, trends, whatever you need to do to show proof, right? Essentially proof of life, right? This is why this program will succeed or fail. This is why we need to go from X to Y. This is why I need what I'm telling you I need. And this is the information I have to back it up. That will be received much more positively than I need. And there's nothing, to show for the need. Also promote me, but there's nothing to show for the request for promotion. Excellent point, Dr. Henry, completely 100% agree.
Yes, and Dr. Henry is the director of the Echo Lab at North Shore and a cardio-oncology expert as well. So she has had to, build this career in the communities and in the different organizations as well in order to succeed and figure out how to advocate for her own Echo Lab. Like, how do you make sure the Echo Lab's really running well and good clinical care and build that expertise? It's not an easy balance. So a lot of what RMB is mentioning, you have to get that data, you have to show what you're doing and really prove what you need.
On that note, thank you, Dr. Gianos, for sharing your expertise with us today. Thank you for those who participated in discussion, added commentary, asked questions, and just listened and absorbed the words of wisdom that were provided tonight. So everyone have safe travels to ACC. If you're staying locally, have a wonderful weekend ahead, and happy Physicians Day.
That's right. Thank you,
All right.
RMB.
You're welcome, Dr. Gianos. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.